6:30 on the dot. I'm going to call to order the December 11th, 2023 school committee meeting. I'm going to read this statement. This meeting is being held in person and or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. We have Harbor Media recording, and we are also recording on Zoom. Is there anybody out in the audience or online recording? If you are online, if you could just throw your hand up. Anything, Sherry? I can't see the, no. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so we will move on to item number 2, approval of minutes. We have 2 set up in there, but we're going to table one of them. So,
I'm not sure what means right.
So cute.
Sorry, hold on till we.
I love the little voices. We're going to move on to approve the minutes of October 30th. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on October 30th. That was the meeting held at Metco Inc.
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Item 3. So we're going to table 2.2 for tonight. So we'll move over to item 3, questions and comments. We set aside 15 minutes to take questions and comments for items not on tonight's agenda. Our practice is to take questions and comments during new business items that are on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment tonight, if you could just raise your hand if you're out in the audience or, okay. Okay, so I'm going to read the statement. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement and welcomes questions and comments as agenda items are discussed at the meeting. In addition, we have set aside up to 15 minutes at the beginning of this meeting for comments or questions that fall under the purview of the school committee and are not already on tonight's agenda. If any guest wishes to speak, please raise your hand, state your name and address your comments to the chairperson. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must relate to the topics within the scope of the responsibility of the school committee. As established by Mass General laws, the responsibility of the school committees are 1, select and to evaluate the superintendent, 2, review and approve budgets for public education in the district, and 3, establish educational goals and policy for the schools in the district. Speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner and to consider the privacy interest of others. The public comment period is not a time for debate or response to comments by the school committee. The school committee is not adopting or endorsing any of the comments made during the public comment period. In addition to this public comment period, the school committee practice provides time for questions and comments from the public on new business items on the agenda. So I see Jacqueline Beaupre. If you don't mind stepping up to the microphone and stating your name and address, and I will.
Jacqueline Beaupre, I'm the president of the Hingham Education Association, representing around 600 educators, paraeducators, custodians, and administrative assistants in Hingham Public Schools. Sure, yes. Today, over 400 members of the Hingham Education Association participated in a vote of no confidence in Superintendent Adams' leadership of Hingham Public Schools. The vote passed with 96% voting in favor. This was not meant as a negotiations action, but rather as a separate solemn statement taken regarding serious concerns about the direction of leadership. Attempts to address these concerns have unfortunately been met with mostly indifference and resistance, further exacerbating our dissatisfaction and worry about the future of Hingham Public Schools. In the HEA's full statement of no confidence, staff cited 26 specific reasons under the broad categories of understaffing, school safety, transparency, observations, and equity. These reasons include Superintendent Adams has failed to communicate adequately with staff and the community on numerous occasions, both proactively and upon request. This includes significant instances regarding school safety on multiple occasions. She has failed to staff the schools adequately and enforce good hiring practices. Under her leadership, there has not been meaningful progress on equity issues, and occasionally further harm has been caused to vulnerable students and staff. Her presence in classrooms is excessive, unproductive, and often disruptive. And finally, under her leadership, Hingham Public Schools has continued to be plagued by a multitude of frustrating payroll errors, including several apparent wage law violations. The members of the HEA hope that this vote encourages reflection on the part of Superintendent Adams and the Hingham School Committee and results in positive changes to reach our common goals of excellence and equity in our schools. Thank you.
Second? Yep, okay. Susie O'Horo, if you can unmute and state your name and address.
Hi, this is Susie O'Horo, 7 Wanderers Drive in Hingham. Doesn't say I can start my video, but I'm sorry, I can't go on video for some reason. I'm not sure why. So I don't know if this is an appropriate point. I wanted to ask some questions about negotiations, or if that's going to be covered in the agenda for a later time.
Yeah, we're not covering negotiations tonight. Carrie will give an update during the subcommittee reports, but we're not discussing negotiations tonight. So this is an appropriate time. If you have concerns, we'd love to hear it.
Okay. I guess my concerns are, particularly given the comment that was just made, that the teachers are going to strike, and what the impact is going to be on students if that happened.
I think
Yeah, no, it was a they took a vote of no confidence in Dr. Adams. There was no discussion about a strike.
No, I understand. I guess I'm just wondering is, if at some point negotiations do break down, what a strike, how that would affect the kids.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll take all questions and then we will answer them either another day, or if Dr. Adams wants to answer them as part of her superintendent report, she can take it up then. Anything else, Susie?
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to cut her short.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't, it muted automatically.
Okay, sorry about that.
Unmute. So, sorry, I did, just as a segue of that, so if they did strike, do they give notice? Again, what the impact is on the kids? Is the main issue salaries? Would, if the issue is salaries, how would that differential be made up? Would teacher positions be cut? Because, at least part of the second override, we all voted for all these positions, and as the teachers just said, staffing is a concern. And, I think having adequate student-teacher ratio is important to me and obviously to our community. And we voted for those positions in the override, and I'm just concerned that the differential would be made up by cutting the teacher positions to make up for those salaries as well. Or would fees be raised, or would be some combination of all of the above? So I guess you obviously can't address all of them today, but I'm hopeful that maybe at some point in the future you would, because as a parent and a taxpayer, I'm worried about the impact of the strike on my kids, particularly after all the learning loss with COVID, but also as someone who is at a fixed income. I'm not someone in Hingham who has deep pockets, and the fees and the taxes were very impactful for me, and I think they're important and overdue. But a third override or additional taxes, additional fees, it gets to be problematic after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
That's all.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay. Could we have a second?
Yes.
If you could state your name and address.
Meredith White, 218 Hall Street, but I'm here to represent the Hingham Interventionists.
Cynthia Barrett, 64 Bel Air Road.
While we're in receipt of your email today, which denied us, again, our proposal for voluntarily to join the HEA union, we want to present to you today with a petition from the teachers from all 4 elementary schools that shows their support for our request to join their union. Please note that we, as are the only group except for principals, that do not have a fair or equitable representation in our schools. We would like now to read the letter that we did send to you so the public is aware of what we're asking for.
Just to warn you, there's 2 more minutes left.
Yep.
Okay. Dear School Committee Chair Carenti and School Committee Member Nee, we write to you after receiving a response refusing to voluntarily recognize Hingham's interventionists as union members of Part HEA Unit A. We are disappointed by your response and wish to reiterate to you our value to the Hingham Public Schools and to our students. We are a key aspect of student success in Hingham, especially to those students who require specialized instruction. We ask you to please reconsider your decision. We understand that our roles are different from many members of Unit A, but all Hingham interventionists are educators who specialize in individualized instruction, who plan lessons, who evaluate student progress, who collaborate with teachers, and who are an integral part of the success of the MTSS program. We will also remind the committee that Unit A is composed of staff with a variety of different roles and duties already. In recognition of the concerns named by the school committee, we are willing to limit our proposals as part of the contract bargaining. In exchange for voluntary recognition, we would limit all substantial proposals and merely engage in bargaining over any clarifications necessary to the contract between the roles and duties of teachers and interventionists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay?
Hi, Lindsay Cruiser, 10 Quail Run in Hingham. I'm a parent of 3 kids, 2 in elementary, 1 in middle, and I also had some questions for about negotiations that I know you might not be able to answer today, but I'm hopeful that you will soon because I know a lot of parents are wondering. As I was thinking about the teacher negotiations, I was thinking back 13 years ago when I was first going back to work with a new baby and hiring someone to take care of her. And my husband and I sat down and we decided that our top value in thinking about what to be like as employers was to make sure that the person caring for our children every day felt valued and didn't have stress about the compensation and the benefits that she was receiving from us. And when I think about the negotiations now, I feel really similarly. My kids love their experience in Hingham Public Schools and have wonderful teachers who are nurturing them. I've read the different proposals and I've read the emails and the Facebook posts from both sides. And as someone who's sat on advisory committee in the past and has some knowledge, although not nearly what some of you do, of municipal finances, the current state of things has raised a lot of questions. As Susie mentioned earlier, we passed an override last year. The override was for a level services budget. And so one of my questions was, what sort of raise percentage for teachers and for paras was built into that level services budget when it was conceived by the school committee last year? And what impact would it have if that raise percentage went up? Are there opportunities to get that money from elsewhere in the town? Would it mean another override? Would it mean cuts? Or are there other creative ideas? I've seen reference to the kind of quote unquote free cash, which on AdCom we called the unassigned fund balance. And my understanding was that generally can't be used for recurring expenses like salary. And so I'd just like for the school committee to talk about whether that's a possible stopgap measure. And if so, what would be the solution after a year or two to continue to fund any of those salary increases. I also had a question about the paid family and medical leave. I learned that municipalities are exempt from sort of the state paid family and medical leave law that a lot of us get our benefits through with private employers, and that a municipality has to opt in if they want to be a part of that. And I was wondering, for the school committee, would the entire town of Hingham have to make the choice as an employer to opt in? Or is that something that you could do by yourselves? And if it's the town, have there been any discussions with the town to move that forward? So I know that that's throwing a lot at you, but I think it would be great to update parents and the community on that.
Okay, thank you. That was perfect timing. You must have practiced. Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Before we move to the next item, I want to address comments to Dr. Adams. I am disheartened at the vote that was just taken. I have full faith in you and your leadership. Your evaluation from the entire committee this year has proved that. You got exceeded expectations in one of your areas as a first-year superintendent, not only to the district, but first year in your career. You did some significant things last year that would have anybody running for the hills. To come in, understand the lay of the land, understand where some of the frustrations were in the past, implement a strategic plan, and also prepare and execute a special town meeting for the building of a new elementary school, and also preparing and executing the override that happened in the spring. To remind people, it was the 5th largest override in Massachusetts history, and that is not any small task. And I appreciate everything that you are doing. And I appreciate that this is hard times, and emotions are running wild. And I hope that you can take that with you as you go to sleep tonight, for the couple hours that you will sleep. I appreciate you. Anyone else? Harry?
Yeah, I was going to update everyone during the subcommittee updates, but if you don't mind going out of order, we actually have some good news coming out of negotiations, from salary negotiations. So we reached a tentative agreement with Unit C, our custodial and maintenance union today, on a contract from 2023 to 2026. So it's great. We started meeting with them in late September. So they were the last HEA union to start negotiations and the first ones to finish up. So we were pretty efficient. We met with them 6 times. This was our sixth meeting. We've had some really good collaborative discussions. And I think this is going to benefit both the district and the employees. I think we came to a good solution here. A lot of creative thinking, which was good. So the subcommittee wanted to thank the negotiating team, Rich Torrig, Al Duquette, and Laura Patnod for their collaboration and for their advocacy for their colleagues. So as far as what's next, now the agreement needs to be ratified by the union and by the school committee before it can take effect. So the whole Unit C will vote on it, and then we'll take it up. And we'd really like to get that going as soon as possible for members of the public. The last contract ended at the end of June, so they've been working under last year's wages for this whole time, and because we didn't know where it was going to land. So we'd like to do once the contract is ratified, those employees will be entitled to back wages since July 1, and they will start getting paid at the higher cost of living increase that we negotiated. So we'd like to have that happen as soon as possible. So what we're proposing is, once Unit C ratifies the agreement, that we could plan a special school committee meeting. It can be over Zoom, and just get it done so they can start receiving that benefit. So, but yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, so it was
Nice
good.
little holiday bump.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I know it's a good time of year. So, yeah. So I have other updates later, but I just wanted to let everyone know that. And
Great.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we will move on to item 4. We've got the superintendent's report. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Ness. Just to address the educators and that vote, I'm deeply saddened by it, but I am deeply committed to the Hingham Public Schools, the students, the teachers, and the families. I have worked tirelessly the last year and a half and deeply care for each of the students that we have as if they were my own, and each of the educators as well. and deeply committed to advocating both in front and behind the scenes for all the supports that are needed, both for our educators and our students and their families. So I'm deeply committed. I'm going to work as hard as I can to do the best we can for all of our students. So I'm just going to jump into our the superintendent's report. I started this, I think, 2 meetings ago to sort of highlight different things that are going on in the community, as well as efforts of the leadership team. Just a reminder also to the community about the new school naming survey. The second survey is out. We'll be collecting results until the end of the month. And at the January 8th meeting, we'll hopefully give you those results. I think last time we looked, we had 1,200 survey responses. And won't share or give an indication of the top responses yet. On January 8th, we'll reveal those. It's a reminder to the community that the school committee needs to submit a warrant to the select board that then goes to the spring town meeting, and town bylaw states that the town meeting gets to decide on the name for the municipal building. CPAC meeting last week. Katie Roberts and Mary Andrews did a presentation on MTSS, as well as the new reading program. We got some great feedback from families about how to continue that message and how to share more information to help support families' understanding of how the district is addressing early literacy and literacy in the elementary grades. There's a lot of work being done on the new elementary school building, phase 1. The plantings are finished. Phase 2, the steel erection was completed on November 7th. You can see some exterior being built out and being closed in. The staff gave feedback on the furniture samples that were delivered. The school building committee will be there tomorrow to hear some of that feedback and help move that furniture ordering forward. The biggest next milestone is the delivery of the windows, and those are expected in January. And we'll knock on wood that those are still on time, because that will help continue to move the project forward. There are several committees and task force doing work behind the scenes. The bullying plan task force met a couple weeks ago for its first meeting and is conducting a needs assessment. Our hope, we have an ambitious plan to bring the final plan in the spring to the school committee as we continue the needs assessment and collecting information, as well as getting information on best practices. There's a small team working on several items behind the scenes around human resources. One around putting together a faculty handbook where all of our processes and procedures in human resources and in multiple departments can be for staff, as well as developing a hiring handbook that will include best practices for hiring for all hiring managers. 2 committees, technology and professional development, looked at their plans and sort of indicated their progress towards their goals. We'll present both in the spring to indicate the progress made on the first year of those 2 plans. And curriculum directors are working on a revision of the DCAP, which we hope to share in January with staff through the spring to get some feedback on a revision of that document. It's an important document because it outlines Tier 1 instruction and what are those modifications and accommodations that happen in the general education. We want to honor and celebrate our educators who helped the students in the fall production for Hingham High School drama, The Little Shop of Horrors. It was a great production. It really shows several months how students and staff working together can put together a great performance, and we're really proud of them. In addition, last week we also had a group of educators come and visit to do a site visit of our social studies program. That site visit, they gave us feedback. That site visit and that feedback will be used as part of the program review process. There's also a survey available that's being spread to get some feedback from families as well that will also inform that process. We have 12 Hingham Middle School and 3 Hingham High School students, music students, who are accepted into the MMEA Southeastern Junior District Music Festival. They'll be performing this March, and we also thank their educators for their support of the students and are very proud of them as well. And I put in your packet as well a copy of the presentation that was done by Katie and Mrs. Mary Andrews, and look to find ways to continue to share that message and the great work being done by educators in the elementary grades with the new reading program.
A lot going on.
Yes.
One last thing, I also shared a timeline for the hiring of the South Elementary principal. We'll begin in January with creating recruiting materials and begin developing a profile. We'll begin advertising, develop a committee with various stakeholders to do some screening. We'll conduct the interviews into February, do some reference checks, as well as schedule finalist interviews into late February into March. We thank Mrs. Eastwood for her long career here in Hingham. She'll be hard to find a replacement for, but are grateful for all of her years of service and we'll be looking for someone who can fill the big shoes she's leaving behind. So we'll begin that process in earnest in January.
Can I ask one question about that? Well, first, can we clone Mary Eastwood would be my first question, but if we can't, on the search, can we also include a school committee member? I didn't see that listed on there on your team. That would be great. Okay.
Yeah.
Two?
Two, yeah.
On the ones that we run or the ones that, because it's, we usually have two for our hires or?
Principal, for the principal. Principal.
Yeah. For the principal, okay.
Typically, we
Okay.
have, yes.
Typically.
Yeah, sorry for that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Had a few.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on to item 5, communications. 5.1, communications received by the superintendent. Anything? No. All right, student communications. Actually, let's hang on one second. We want to make sure we hear everything you're saying.
Good stuff. I said it's the good stuff that comes from Alex.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, what do you have for us?
Oh, sorry. Let me move the chocolate.
Well, I figured I'd start out with Little Shop of Horrors, as Dr. Adams just mentioned. They put on 3 performances this past week, and we also had 2 performances by HHS choral groups this past Tuesday and Thursday, going into winter. And we've had 3 HHS music students accepted to the MMEA Southeastern Junior District Music Festival. So congratulations to Noelle Eigenman, Jacob Luvac, and Julia Shermer. And recently a story ran the Boston Globe with the girls hockey team and Matt Brown, who was paralyzed at the age of 15 in a hockey accident and has advocated ever since. And we had 28 students this past week rewarded with the Andrew Ward Hoftig Kindness Award to recognize their efforts. And Jim Quattromoni will be receiving the NFHS Citation Award for dedication and commitment to interscholastic athletics in the state of Massachusetts from the Massachusetts Secondary Schools Athletic Directors Association. And registration opened recently for our preschool program, March 4th through May 20th, operated by students in our child development program. Max Papaglione, one photo of the week once again. It's his 12th award. I can't remember what the record is at this point.
4 more.
4 more.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he'll get it. Looking ahead, the work of HHS artists will be displayed at an art showcase in room 103 from starting today through Friday. And the 9th grade advisory groups met today. Our orchestra groups will be performing tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in the HHS auditorium. And Wednesday, the 13th, marks the midpoint of the term, so students and parents can count on updates to grades in Aspen. Hingham Unity Council will be hosting a program about social media and rising extremism here at Town Hall tomorrow night at 7. And I think that covers it fairly well.
That sounds great.
Student Advisory Committee will most likely be meeting tomorrow morning, and I don't think I have anything specific to discuss, but I think that covers it all pretty well.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, 5.3, other communications. Anybody on the committee receive anything?
I did actually. I received an email about a super easy topic, school start times. But a community member had reached out just if there had been any, because there's been a lot of research about it, a lot of stuff in the news about school start times, and was there anything happening on that end? And I said, at the moment, no, but potentially something for the future to consider. But just wanted folks to know that somebody reached out about that.
Be great. Okay.
And volunteer to help if we do want to start doing some research or doing any kind of background, putting together. I explained the issue really is the transportation and the cost of that, right? Because you need more buses, you need more bus drivers. So as usual with all things education related, there is a cost to it, but it's great to hear from them and great that they offered to be part of the process if we do want to ever consider
great.
that. So
Okay, thank you. Okay, so item 6 is unfinished business. We don't have any. So we'll move over to item 7, new business, to receive an update on the Foster School Improvement Plan and act as appropriate. We've got Matt Shifley here to present on Foster.
The last one. So thank you for having us tonight. Get the slideshow going. So we have a little update here on where we're at this point in the school year. I just wanted to go over the mission statement really quick at Foster. Our students will enjoy the process of learning, constantly striving to meet their potential and become lifelong learners. Be responsible and will demonstrate respect for self, others, and property. Practice critical thinking skills to solve problems. Have a strong sense of community both in and outside of the school. And I think we do a pretty good job on a lot of these, especially right now. We have some nice donation bins outside the school for the season and a lot of gifts coming in to help support the community. I'm not going to go through and read all of the names on this, but there are a lot of people on here. I did want to make note that we have added a parent rep and we have added another staff member onto the council this year. We've added Sarah Vogel as a teacher rep, and we have added Christy McDonald onto our school council this year. So it's nice to have a little bit of an expansion. The goals that we had for this year, number 1 was improved communication and collaboration. Goal number 2 was the Hingham tiered systems of support. And goal number 3, improve positive behavior support interventions. And finally, goal 4 was to improve the ISIT 504 and special education processes. That came out of order, but that's okay. We'll go back to that. Just wanted to highlight some of the things that we did last year. Coffees with the principal. I think being the new guy, they were very well attended at the beginning, but as the year went on, they waned a little bit. But it was nice to really get to know the community, get to understand the concerns around the project. And in particular, we had new families that started coming when they arrived as the school year went on. So it was nice to meet some new faces and give them the lay of the land. I think the first big issue that required a lot of community support was the recess last year. That was a little bit of an adventure that kind of spilled into this year to start our school year. But, we did a lot of meeting with parents. I can't say enough about the staff schedules. Staff worked with me, especially our specialists, to help provide extra coverage outside at recess during that difficult period. Again, bringing in resources, our school resource officer and our director of facilities were instrumental in helping get the barriers that we needed to produce a safe space for children. And then this year, I can't say enough again about my friend over here, Katie St. Clair, absolutely came through when we had to pivot, and within 48 hours, she had those barriers back for us to help us make sure we could run recess when the drilling noise was too loud this year. So there have been some adventures, shall we say, in relation to the project. Traffic pattern is the next one that a lot of collaboration has taken place. I can't, again, say enough about the community people who came and joined me this summer and supported me in developing a plan so that we didn't completely take over Downer Ave. We have, again, the support of the staff, absolutely fantastic people out there making sure our children are getting out of the cars safely. But all in all, it has, I don't want to say it, today was an adventure a little bit with the rain. More people drove today. So we did have a little bit of a backup today, probably the second one we've had since the start of school. But I think we all anticipated that as being a concern. And then throw in a water project and a few other things around the neighborhood, and it's been a little bit busy. Field Day. I just wanted to highlight Field Day. I want to thank the staff, and I also want to thank the PTO parents. If you weren't aware, we bussed off of property last year. We wound up at the rec department for our Field Day, and that's no small feat to get everybody on the bus, get them moving to an area, to have everything organized, ready, and set to go. I think we did a good job collaborating with staff, getting Field Day feedback as to what had happened in the past. I think the ability to work with parents to make this happen was no small feat. And honestly, I know we're getting new digs, but it's at least going to be another year or two of Field Day, possibly being off-site, depending on how the end of the project goes. But I think we're up to the challenge, and I just can't say enough about all of the people who participated in making it happen. The other thing I think that's excited about the collaboration within the community, and I'm kind of forward thinking a little bit in that when we are in the new property, we are going to have the advantage of having some spaces that we can really utilize. So I can't thank enough the PTO and their hard work at getting clubs organized. I also want to acknowledge a couple of staff members. The PTO helped fund our robotics program that we began this year. We're kind of going small, just laying the seeds and getting it off the ground. It's something I have not been able to do since I left Plymouth about 18 years ago. But it was my claim to fame when I was a teacher, and it's exciting. Mr. Reiser and Mr. Levinson have been instrumental in helping us organize and get the robotics program going. It is challenging, I will say that. The kids will say there are days where they have some tears. There are days when they have smiles, but it's all the experience of success and failure. And it's kind of funny how you can see them one week just really excited and enthusiastic, and then you can see the next week where they're a little bit stuck on, in particular, programming can be a bit of a challenge. And then the other club for our K-3 students, we do have a Lego club that's organized by some fantastic parents. They have a weekly project that they work on. I think last week, if my memory is correct, was they were ornaments. So it was the first week that they were able to design and bring home some of their creations. So it's been a real community effort. I know you can see the bins of Legos behind me here. Those were donations by the community. So it really has been a nice project to kind of start the seeds to get it going and really move it forward next year. The other thing I wanted to highlight about communication and collaboration is we started the pre-K Spanish immersion program. I can't thank Dr. Adams enough for leading the charge on that. We also had Jackie Sansone and Erica Pollard. We had some parent meetings. We really did a lot to get a sense for, is this something the community wanted? And I want to thank our staff, Michelle Magner, sorry, there it is, Natalia Catone and Jennifer Garrettson for their hard work at getting this program off the ground at Foster this year. And hopefully we'll be continuing it into the next school year as well. This is about the tiered systems of support. And I know my colleagues have probably talked to this ad nauseum as they've come up here. I'm the lucky guy who's going last. But I did want to highlight this. You know, the staff feedback, and you'll see some slides with staff feedback, has been overwhelming. And we have some data to show, and I don't I get excited about data, but I don't, it's our first real data point with the new schedule and with some of the work that we've been doing last year. So we've seen some positive trends in some directions, and I get excited about it. But we've had, we started the schedule. I know Mr. Lamoth did a ton of work, and then we wound up tweaking it a little bit for our own buildings. But it really was fabulous last year, and some of the feedback that staff had was it was so nice to have a schedule where you weren't expected to be servicing 2 grades at the same time at once. None of that is happening. So it really does help ensure that the interventions are not interfering with the Tier 1 curriculum that's being presented. The other thing that I would highlight is our staff meeting time and professional development. We used multiple staff meetings at the beginning of the school year in particular to spend some time focusing in on the multi-tiered systems of support and what does it look like. I would sing to the high heavens about our coaches and the work that they did on our half-day PD days. Those are very important days when it comes to the implementing of MTSS and our new reading program. So they did yeoman's work, and then leading the charge with data meetings around our data and what are we looking at for the interventions, all very important. The other thing that we started at Foster this past spring, which was a kind of a test run, was a limited run of some professional learning community meetings. We are now in full implementation this year, but it is the work that absolutely is essential when it comes to implementing a robust Tier 1 curriculum. Thinking about the reading work that we're doing, it also is important to be talking about what are we doing within our rotations and our centers within the 90-minute blocks of instruction. All very productive. Dr. Adams has kind of given me the look, because I know this is my professional goal this year, is to really focus on the PLCs and make them as robust as we can. So that's where I am and what I'm working on to support the school improvement plan. And then the final thing that we're going to be looking at for this coming school year are lesson studies. I have 2 grades that seem to be ready and willing and able to commence on trying our first ever lesson studies at Foster Elementary School this year. And I'm looking forward to trying that out. It is a very, very powerful tool when done correctly. I've done it before. I've done it correctly, and I've done it incorrectly. So I've learned from some bumps and bruises along the way. But I am looking forward to that opportunity for teachers to be able to see what's happening instructionally within that 90-minute block, what practices can we take away from it, and what can we do to improve together as a team. So it's a very collaborative, community-oriented process. I just wanted to throw up some of the quotes from our teaching staff about our PLCs. The PLCs have been excellent and highly needed, and a highly needed addition. Continued focus on providing PLC time can help make it more effective, and we are working hard at that at Foster. Successes, students who need support are receiving the necessary support from our intervention staff. Push-in support during our learning rotations has been effective for supporting students and enhancing communication between classroom, teacher, and interventionists. The schedule has also allowed for specific time to be allocated to TRI and TMI outside the core instructional time. I'm going to skip over, we'll jump to the shorter one. And intervention is the most successful it has ever been. Do not change the staffing or model. So these are some of the quotes that came out of the leadership survey and feedback that staff gave to me at the end of the year as my first year of principal at Foster. So there was some nice feedback around the work that we're doing. I just wanted to give you a view as to, we've got some kindergartners, and we've got some 4th graders. Happened exactly the same time. This is the point I'm making, is you've got math interventions happening at grade 4 in these pictures. You've got ELA, English Language Arts interventions happening at kindergarten. They're not overlapping each other's times. It really does make for an effective intervention block. And I did want to highlight a few things of data that we saw at Foster this year. Again, it's one data point. When I see 3, I'll start talking, hey, we're trending in the right direction. But it is exciting to see this after 1 year of the implementation of the schedule. So students on 504 plans and IEPs reversed a 2-year decline in ELA MCAS. That's huge. I do like to focus in on subgroups and see how they're doing. if I saw the trend, I would jump out with this grand proclamation. But I do believe a lot of it does have to do with kids not missing core instruction, tier 1 instruction. And I think that past practices may have been that kids miss some of their core instruction to receive other servicing. So I think this is a very helpful piece of data to see coming out of there. Again, focusing in on our students on 504 and IEPs. We have had our highest scores since 2018 in mathematics. Coming out of a pandemic, I'm excited to see that. Again, I want to see a couple years of this before I'm really jumping up and down, but I do think it is evidence that things are going in a good direction or starting to. And then one of the big focuses, and I go back to coaching and the work that we do around writing. So we did an MCAS analysis as a staff on some of our results and what did we see. And one of the areas of concern that staff came up with was improving in writing. And what can we do to improve in writing? And we put together some PD days and had staff receive some training from our writing coach. Very effective work. And I'm celebrating our grade 5 points, which took more than a 10% jump in the points earned overall. Positive behavior intervention supports. We started our work this spring, late February, early March, around the behavioral matrix. Where we are now this year is we are looking at taking the data that has been collected by staff around the behavioral expectations at the school, creating some lessons that can be implemented during our morning meetings. And then one thing that I would really like to see us get off the ground this year before we go to the new school is monthly assemblies around targeted focus areas. It might be being responsible. It might be, I don't know, Jen, give me another one. It'd be using the COM tool, using some of the tools from the toolbox. Thank you, I'm having a brain cramp. But yeah, I think one of the things that I have enjoyed about positive behavior intervention supports is the celebrations. As you are aware, Foster doesn't necessarily have a spot that the whole school can get together to have such a celebration. So I think a year from now, hopefully when I'm doing this presentation, I won't be last. I promise you I'm going to be the first one. But once we have the new building under our thumb and we're moving along in the new building, I'm really looking forward to having school-wide assemblies where we celebrate successes together. And then finally, we're kind of looking to have some scripts kind of read by students over the loudspeakers in the morning. We've had some success. We've started some programming around that with celebration of diversity. So we've got cultural things that are being read out loud in the mornings and lots to be excited about. So we're looking to use our student council to get engaged in this and really put this together over the course of the spring so that we're ready to launch it next year full steam ahead with the new building. Just want to highlight our Foster's Finest over the lab. We've got, this has been since the beginning of the year. These are all of the winners, the slips that come in on a weekly basis for our students as to celebrate their successes. And just thought I'd add that in there. We're still working on this goal, which is improving the IST process, the 504 and the special education processes. I would say that Mrs. Newell and I have attended probably between 80 and 100% of the meetings over the course of the last year. This year's been a little bit slower for me to be able to do that, but I'm still getting in there when I can. I think one of the things that I would say is that we are really trying to focus on the data that we are collecting through iReady and the data that we're seeing on the classroom level and making sure that we are using the DCAP and using strategies that are going to help students succeed prior to any kind of referral for special education. I think this coupled with the MTSS work that we're doing, I know what I saw in Barnstable when we started implementing this, and that we did have a reduction in referrals, and we did see a lot of success because of the system. So we have real data, current data, and we've been looking at the interventions overall, making sure that our interventionists are monitoring the data and making sure that we are seeing success when we do implement something to go through the IST process. Intervention block impact, I think I talked a little bit about this. Special education students are receiving tier 1 instruction in the classroom. I do believe that is contributing to a reduction in gaps that can sometimes be created. And then the majority of our service delivery is in the intervention blocks so that the kids are not missing that tier 1 instruction. And then finally, I think I talked about the MCAS results. I don't have anything else left to say. I am open to any kind of questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I got the pleasure of going through all of this as I'm the liaison with Foster, so thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Just
Yeah.
real quick on the recess piece. I would say, so one of my children's at Foster, and that was a true success story. You know, a bunch of parents get the email saying, you know, sorry, understandably, we're sorry we can't do recess because we have these building issues. And you know, I would say my experience in general is normally people get frustrated and try and come up with solutions on their own, and then it's hard. There are true hard barriers to implement. And in this case, I thought you did a great job of listening to the community and partnering with others. And
it was a lot of help behind the scenes.
Yeah, but I mean, it happened extremely quickly. And you know, I know everyone in the district was really, really thrilled with that. So thank you.
I do applaud you and the staff and the families at Foster School, because I recognize how very disruptive a building project is, particularly when that building is happening on the very same property that the new building is being on. So between the staff at the school, the students themselves, the facilities team, the parents, I mean, it is really it's tough, and this is a quick time frame, but people are really pulling together and getting this done, and it's really appreciated. I know how much extra work it is on everyone's behalf. So really grateful to you as the leaders, Dr. Adams as the leadership here, moving this project forward, getting it done, and getting it done with as little disruption as possible, so that next year when you come back, we will have this fabulous pictures of all the kids in the same space at their first all-school meeting.
We couldn't do it without the staff and the people behind the scenes making, you know, every move possible.
Yeah.
So thank you to everybody for their support as well.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
So we need to approve the update.
Yes, I will make a motion to approve the year 2 Foster School Improvement Plan for fiscal year 24.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that's approved. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so
That's confidence, by the way.
that is confidence. Yeah, we got
We're going to approve it.
To receive an update from facilities, we'll have, I'm assuming, Katie St. Clair and Aisha Opong. And before you start, I want to thank you for the facilities tour that you provided on Saturday. It was school committee, advisory committee, and select board were invited to go on a little tour of the schools. We visited four schools and just looking at some of the major things coming down the pike, and really appreciate it, because I think seeing it is, we now understand when you're talking about the boiler at the high school, we actually saw it. So I appreciate you pulling that together.
You're welcome. All right, well, thank you. I guess this is a great time to say thank you to all the custodians, maintenance staff, and Katie for the great job they do in our schools every day, and Ashley as well too, in terms of really pulling together and making sure that our schools keep on running. They're clean, they're safe, and a great place for our kids to be, right? In terms of Katie and her team, they've done so much from the beginning of school when Dr. Adams presented all that had been done to prepare for back to school in the summer. And that work continues, and it continues every day. It's funny because we were at the negotiation table today, and Katie had to sit at the edge of the table just in case anybody would call and she'd have to run off or get the phone, or because she's always on call, almost 24 hours a day, all the time, on weekends. If anything should happen in the buildings, Katie's always there to make sure that things continue to move smoothly. So thank you, Katie, again.
You're welcome.
All right, maybe you want to take us through some of that stuff?
Sure. So I think in your packets you might have an outline of what we've done this quarter. So I've done what we've done for the district wide. We just had the gym floors refinished. We had the kitchen hoods inspected. At East School, we repaired some of the playground equipment. We repainted the parking lot. Foster, we had a sump pump that we had to replace in the boiler room. Plymouth River, we had a camera installed, and we submitted a grant with the Green Communities for a lighting project in the cafeteria and the library. South School, we had a gutter replaced, and we seeded the upper playground and the front of the building. And so we have been doing a lot, and I'm sure there's plenty on here that I forgot to add.
Right. I mean, even from our tour on Saturday, you would have seen that, as Matt mentioned before, as part of the Foster Project, Katie's on call all the time in terms of whether it was with the water main break, getting into the building and shutting off the boilers when the water main break happened.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the playground, when the playground had to be transferred from one spot to the next, getting the barriers. Katie's a person and her team behind the scenes getting that all put together for us. We almost finished a whole tennis court project this year, and it's Katie and her team again who are behind the scenes doing that work as well. And even with that, they've had significant a number of persons being out on sick leave and everything else, but they continue to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just want to continue saying thank you. I don't know if you have any questions for us.
I completely agree with you 100%. She's, as you can see, she's humble, but she keeps the schools running and
Definitely.
efficiently, and it's amazing what you were able to get done. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay. To my agenda. All right. So 7.3, to receive report on review of procedures and policies of human resources. So just to give a background, Dr. Pamela Gould had been in the district to work with Dr. Adams on coming up with best practices, best HR practices, and she'll give you a history of what her background is. When the incident at the middle school happened, I reached out to her and asked her if she would do an investigation of what had happened. So she is here to present her findings and recommendations from that process. So thank you, Dr. Gould.
Thank you. No problem at all. I miss being at school committee meetings, so.
Wait, that's something that you miss?
She said facetiously. Not that you're all not lovely people. So, yes. So my background is I've been in education my entire career, but a chunk of it, and probably one of the best jobs that I've ever had, was the assistant superintendent for human resources. That was just more up my alley. But I did retire as a superintendent out of the Sandwich Public Schools, and now getting to do some of the work in districts that you're more passionate about, and I enjoy thoroughly. And so one of the things has been coming up. I had been contacted by Dr. Adams, last spring, I think, to do some work with, you were transitioning your HR department. You had somebody new in there that hadn't done it in the public sector, had done it in the private sector. So I've actually formed quite a good relationship with Kelly in that, and working with Aisha too. So it's been nice. But you had an incident, and so then we got the call and said, do you mind doing kind of an unbiased? I mean, except for some of the slight relationships that I have here, it certainly was unbiased. I don't live in the community. I'm not from here at all, so I've never worked in Hingham, so I think it was a chance to have someone's kind of outside look at it, to do an assessment all around. And so we did begin, and you have the report, but we interviewed as many as we could possibly think of. We started with the central office staff. I came up and we spent almost a couple of hours one day just looking at it from all different perspectives, not just the incident and the public uproar about it in that sense. What are the things around the hiring we could do, all that stuff, are they doing, et cetera. Then we went to, I did talk with the chief of police. I'll come back to that in a little bit. And then I did have a chance to talk with Ness, so that was nice. Each of the principals, because this substitute had worked in the buildings. And I think it's important to note, to be fair to a substitute teacher in the sense too, this really isn't about the person. It's about the incident in a situation and how from soup to nuts, the Hingham Public Schools handled it, anything good, bad, and recommendations you might make going forward. Because I feel bad anytime you're talking about a person. To me, it's not about that person. It's about making improvements in any system. We are all 2 seconds away from a lot of things happening in a district. Things happen. We're human beings. You have people that do wrong things inadvertently in life, and it's how you deal with it from that point forward. The hard part about schools is you're in the public sector, and that's the hardest part. Okay, so in the processes, if we stick with just the hiring in a sense, one of the questions that I know has come up, and I think you've addressed it, but I'll address it again just to make sure that everyone understands, was this incident happened in November, right? I'm losing track of my dates now, but in November, the question was, well, what about the hiring, and how did a query and a fingerprint not come up with this? The substitute teacher was hired back in February, and as is the law and any part of this, always, your query and your fingerprint are as good as the day you do them. That's the way, the nature of the way the law is written. The only way to solve that is to do a query once a week, which is just not feasible. We know that. Not the state couldn't handle it, never mind your school district. And so that happens. I remember being on the Cape, and there was a situation far more egregious than this with a staff member that had some pornography stuff going on, and it was horrific, and people were killing the school district about it. But the problem was, at that time, nothing was there, and that's as best you can do at that moment. And so this situation that caused this person to be arrested occurred in that time frame since. Mm-hmm. So nothing in the hiring. Now, I will say what Dr. Adams, who's in her second year, and Kelly, who's in her first year, they've been doing anyway, regardless of this situation, is trying to make sure that everything on the hiring is shored up, the policies, the procedures. So there is still some work to be done there, but I don't want people to think it wasn't being done. It was absolutely being done. It just had more focus on it right now for obvious reasons. So they are continuing to work on that. And you'll see some of that in my recommendations towards the end. Each of the principals I talked with, that the substitute had been in, and not a significant amount of times. It appears that Hingham might have a decent amount of substitutes, unlike a lot of districts, because the substitute had been working a handful of times in each district with no issues. And I write right in the report, the only thing, there were two things. One was prior to the incident, the principal, the substitute, the classroom teacher reported that she didn't really follow the substitute plans, and she was very frustrated with that as a teacher, understandable. So they just made the decision they weren't going to have her back. That happens all the time. Principals do doesn't mean you fire someone from a district. It's just in that building, they're not going to come back. Well, I used to do that all the time. The other thing happened kind of after the fact. A principal said he heard that after the fact, that same thing, really wasn't following the lesson plan. And so, but that's it. There was no other thing that not one principal raised any other red flags prior to that. So that person had been in good standing through that process. So for people to understand that. I did interview the chief of police, and I need to state up front, I am not a police officer. I'm not in the law. The only thing I will say that I would encourage, and I write this in the report, is a continued relationship with the police. The reason if this person was in their home and been arrested, they go right to the home, search, do the arrest warrant, boom, you're arrested, you go. The reason you have an MOU with your police is to try to alleviate some of this, in the sense that you try to have a relationship with your police so that the superintendent and the chair of the school committee aren't getting told at the time of the arrest. Because like it or not, to the community, not to you people, you understand this, it becomes much more public than if it was just at home. If they lived on 100 Main Street, no one would have ever paid any attention to this. But because they went into the schools and did it during school time, it caused, which had nothing to do with the Hingham Public Schools, really. And so that caused, so I guess I would encourage a continued relationship and a looking at what does the MOU really mean. I'm not saying don't arrest the person. If they felt they needed to do, that's where I'm not a police officer. I can't jump to say you shouldn't have done that. That's not my place. But what I would say is at least do the due courtesy, sit your cruiser outside, do the courtesy to the superintendent and the chair of the school committee, and wait 10, 15 minutes and make sure the communication is ready to go. And I think that is important. To find out after the fact, even if it's as close as possible, is very difficult on a school district. Very difficult. And so I think that I would encourage that. I can't slam them. Again, it's not my job, but I think I've been lucky enough, I've watched good and bad relationships with the police, but I've also been lucky enough to have very good relationships when I was a school superintendent and the assistant superintendent with the police to have that. So I would encourage that kind of re-looking at, if possible. Again, I can't tell you, they've got to be willing to, participants in that too. But I just think a little bit more time might have been more helpful. Because I know Dr. Adams and Ness were making a decision on a dime. And that's very difficult to do. I then talked with your school committee chair, just kind of getting from her perspective what happens. And I write right in the report, there's a time, there's 8 minutes. That's how tight this timing was. That she would, and so kudos to your chair who picked up the phone immediately. That isn't always able to happen. But the decision was made because it didn't involve the students in the Hingham Public Schools or the Hingham Public Schools per se, the decision was not to, that they didn't need to send out a communication immediately or at all at that moment. And we can go back and forth and question that, and I think people have, and that's a fair point. Dr. Adams and I have had that conversation. In hindsight, which is always 20/20, I would have done it more immediately, and not because, again, there was anything wrong happening to the schools, but you disarm, you educate. And then that way it allows people to at least know nothing happened at that moment. Because then we all know the rumor mill starts and the telephone game starts. And by the time a week goes by, that kinds of things. So that's just lessons learned. And what would we do different moving forward? You debrief. That's been part of this whole process, is debriefing after an incident. And so I think that is a huge piece of that. Moving forward, what do you do? And Dr. Adams and I talked about this a lot too, is different communities. I'm working with an assistant principal in another district as a coach, and she worked in a very, very urban district before she went to a very, very small community. And how she handles, she's like, Pam, everything was a fire in my old thing. Everything. You can't report on everything. You just can't. But this smaller community, it's a little different. So it's also knowing that and understanding that. So I would encourage and move on from that. So I think at the end, the end result is some of the recommendations, that I have made in here that we've talked about is just continuing to batten down the hiring, making sure queries are done. Again, they are, but what is the cycle so that Dr. Adams knows what the cycle is at all times to understand that. They are working on their substitute handbook or have already done the substitute handbook and our training, which was happening anyway, which is fantastic. I am working with Kelly on a faculty handbook. These are just common things you do in a district that just weren't here. And so they are working on that. The audit on that, the best practices for hiring document is being drafted to make sure all the principals are on the same page. Again, nothing was done wrong here, but why not stay to make sure you're doing best practices? Okay. So pretty much that's where I'm at. My big two takeaways at the end, again, was the relationship with the police and just continuing to work. What is the best way to communicate to your community? Understanding the people that you have to, you have ownership to, and how do they want communication to be done? We've learned something from that. Lesson learned. So let's kind of move forward. And again, thankfully, in this situation, it wasn't anything to do with any of your students or your staff. I probably went a little fast on that, so I apologize, but I figured I want to give you guys time for some questions. And I was guessing you probably already have read this, so.
Does anybody have any questions?
Ask anything.
Matt?
So thank you for doing this.
No problem at all.
I was definitely happy. I wasn't sure exactly what was going to be included, and so I'm really happy that it is comprehensive and not just focused on the hiring practices.
Right.
Because I would agree with you. I think at the outset of this, sort of the public outcry was very focused on that.
Yeah.
But then there were the other couple of aspects that you mentioned around communication and how was this person performing, and not this person, in the schools prior. So I'm appreciative of that it covers all of them. I'm curious, I have one question on the sort of the Plymouth River and the other school. Did we only talk to principals, or was there the opportunity to talk to maybe other people that interacted with this person in a classroom at the same time? Because the principal is going to have some knowledge, but not have,
it's
you know, day to day.
It's a fair question. I don't think this would have taken a lot longer to do that. The two that I did talk with, the comments that they made were because of communications with teachers. So, I mean, I guess we have some confidence and hope that our principals do talk with it as much as possible.
Course.
But no, you're right. That I didn't get to go into length to other people in the building. You know, one you could have talked with is typically, I won't speak to Hingham. I'll just use my past. Your assistant principals do a lot of the getting the substitutes, but we went directly just to the principals and hoped they knew I was calling. So that was, I think, very helpful. So that they could maybe do some due diligence prior to the conversation.
Okay, and then thank you. A couple other questions on that piece. The lesson plan piece, and I'm not a teacher, my wife happens to be, that feel, like I'm not debating it, but I guess I feel like substitute teachers probably don't, there's often cases where substitute teachers don't follow lesson plans. And so I guess I'm curious, is this happening a fair amount where and you probably don't
I don't know, right.
And then why in this case? Like, it seems a little bit odd that in this case, this teacher who happens to have other, you know, stuff that was going on
fair enough,
outside of the school system was asked not to come back because of to one particular school or because of a lesson plan not being followed. Because again, I think that's fairly common.
I don't disagree with you, and I will say, I guess I could say two points without pure knowledge. I'm saying this is that one is that good for you for your substitute teachers. If this one time that was enough to get you not to, well, good for your substitutes. That means they are following. But the second part is that could there have been maybe something else and they were just saying that we're using that as? That could be. But regardless, it wasn't anything so egregious that this person needed to be fired from the district. That's the most important point out of it. Nothing I heard rose to that at all.
And are you able to talk about the other school that we heard after the fact? Because again, I think the public may not have perfect information, but it's at least they are hearing things as well. Are you able to?
It might have been Matt, actually. It might have been. I'm trying to remember the actual because he didn't even write it because it was so. But I think in talking with Dr. Adams after the report was written, I guess that would be something people might want to know. But even the principal heard it after the fact. So again, it was an off the cuff kind of comment, maybe with the teacher, I think.
And the other piece. Thank you. The other piece on this, which again, I'm just curious. You mentioned that was in, I think, all the schools for some period of time, but not a lot. Do we know, like, I think that actually would help people to some degree, and we can't do this all the time, but like in this case where there was an investigation, like what was it, 30 total days across the, whatever that is, 7 months? Was it 10 days? Was it, just generally, how often was
I don't think I can answer that. There were some principals, when I talked to them, they had physically looked to see how many times. Just they knew I was calling, physically looked. The others just said, a handful. I honestly, I would say most of them said no more than 5, 6, 7 times. Okay. I don't know whether that's just you spread them out. I have no idea how that works here, honestly.
Okay. That makes sense.
I was kind of surprised that she was in, I think, every building, because that doesn't typically they're elementary subs or secondary subs. But so.
Okay, that's helpful. So, and then let me press a little bit on the communication piece, because what you said here was a little bit, not different, but more pointed, I guess, in terms of your thoughts on the communication day of, and I want to talk about the week after. Because when I read this, it felt like there wasn't really a stance being taken on should a communication have gone out that day. And I think what I heard you say is it probably should have.
My personal opinion, I've said that, I'm not perfect as a superintendent either. In hindsight, I have years of experience of it. That would be my recommendation. I think it not disarms isn't even the right word. I think it puts people a little bit more at ease to know. Now, are there still going to be people that will have concerns and bring it up? 100%.
And I get part of, when you're, I'm sure, I don't know what the thought process was, but sending a communication can raise more questions too.
100%.
So I understand that. And the communication, if it had gone out, would have been vague. There's no question about that.
You're not sharing a whole lot of information.
Appropriately vague. So I think it could have raised more questions, but that's helpful. And did you talk at all about so Friday, incident happens, I think, on a Friday.
Yeah.
And then there's a week until the communication goes out.
Right.
so there was the initial decision,
Mhm.
and then there was this week of activity or week of sort of, and some communications back and forth, I think, with parents around this. Was that a part of what you talked
Well,
about,
just
or have any thoughts on that?
with Ness especially, just kind of going through the timeline of that is the decision that because it didn't involve on that particular day, it didn't involve any of the kids. It's not that it wasn't important what happened, but it didn't involve do you create the kind of the bigger storm than it is, and then what I can gather from my conversations with Ness and Dr. Adams was that over the course of the week, clearly there was. The public was getting wind of this. And as I would imagine, I'm making this up, things start getting out of control. People are saying things that probably weren't even true. And so you need to do, and I believe it was in that week that you did your parent forum. Was it in that week? Or was it after?
Week after.
Okay. Sorry about the timeline. And so, you start to pick up that's happening, and you need to address rumor control in a sense at this
and
point.
It does take time to craft
Yes.
the communication,
Yes.
understandably. Again,
Yeah.
you certainly want to make sure it's not.
Well, you get to a point you realize, okay, it needs to be addressed versus it's going away. And again, that sounds negative. I don't mean it like that, but it wasn't blowing over.
Yep.
And so it needed to be addressed. That was very clear, I think, in this.
Yep.
And so the decision, the parent forum, and that communication.
Okay, and then my final comment, I think,
That's okay.
for now, I apologize, is one of the rationales that I think we've been, or that I've heard as part of it, is that the alleged, or the crime, or the whatever the right terminology is, alleged crime, or which was out of district. And to me, that's not. I don't think that should be. I don't think that should be a factor, because if there was a murder and it didn't happen in Hingham, we would communicate it. It would be communicated. I mean, there'd be no question, right? So I just think I think there's other aspects of that are important, nonviolent. That was we did talk about, or you did talk about, and then didn't impact the kids in the school. So I think those are relevant. I would just say I feel like the fact that something's happening, not necessarily in Hingham, to me, it shouldn't be sort of looking forward, shouldn't be a rationale as to how we think about what should be communicated. I'll shut up.
Allie?
I just wanted to speak quickly to the MOU. We did take it up in our policy meeting was that only last week? Feels like forever ago, but last week already. And I know Dr. Adams has already been in touch with Chief Jones as well, so he's heard from a lot of us.
He attended the meeting too.
Yeah, we invited him to the meeting. Good. We do have a good working relationship with him.
He did say that. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
He was very,
It is a good relationship. We reviewed the MOU with him just to make sure we all still felt it was relevant. We do that on a yearly basis with the full committee, so that will come back in the spring for everyone to approve. But we did go through it, and we had some good discussions, and some of the discussions support everything that you found and that your recommendations, but a lot of it was about the timing and the communications. And I think Dr. Adams and Chief Jones have had some good discussions about in the future, moving forward, what's laid out in the MOU about who is the point of contact, what is the chain of command, who's communicating what to who. And I think there's some work that we will continue to do to kind of shore up that process, but everything that was in the MOU was followed.
I'm sure it was.
Exactly as laid out. So I think it is good that, now we've seen the timing piece, I think, was the biggest problem. Once the warrant went out for her arrest, they went to the school, and Dr. Adams was contacted after that arrest happened. So
and that's what I was trying to say, is that consideration and understanding. This doesn't happen in a vacuum here. This is a public building, the building it was in. You have to know as the police, this is going to cause a storm. So a little more consideration for the school district in that situation. Not to say don't arrest the person. That's not my place to say that. That has nothing to do with it. Yes, ideally, I'm sure Dr. Adams would have preferred this happened after she went home. Yep, you guys would never have known about it. Nothing would have ever happened. His argument is that can't happen. Okay, but I still think a more consideration could have happened.
Right, and just that moment to take a breath so that the schools can be prepared.
Let them be
that
prepared
was kind of
for
our
it.
biggest conversation is if there's that time for the school to be prepared to immediately communicate, then it takes away a lot of the conjecture from parents.
I'm with you.
Jen?
No, I appreciate this report and everything that you've done, everyone you've talked to. And just going back off the MOU, and again, stressing that we have a strong relationship with the police department. And I'm glad that we've been able to have this conversation tonight, because I was a little confused when I read the report, because I wanted more clarity, I guess, on understanding what you meant by the relationship with the police and the MOU. And I think you've answered my question, so I appreciate that.
Thank
so
you.
I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and just to add, the police chief and I are meeting every 2 weeks, and we're going to develop a cadence of meeting every 2 weeks to just communicate. We also asked, after our policy meeting, the principals to meet with their SROs to review the MOU, so that'll happen in the next couple of weeks as well. And last year we met about 4 times with the security, a security group that is looking at our emergency plans. We met about 3 or 4 times last year. We're meeting every month this year in order just to get into a cadence where we're meeting and talking about our emergency plans, how we're going to communicate with each other, debrief situations. The next meeting we'll debrief the evacuation that we had at Foster a couple weeks ago, and how that went and how we can improve upon our practices and our procedures. So.
Yeah, I think the one question that I had, and again, thank you, Dr. Gould, for answering it. And I know after talking to Dr. Maestas and Dr. Gallo how well respected you are in your field. So appreciate the work that you're doing on behalf.
I've learned from some of the best around me, that's for sure.
But I had a question, but I think you answered it well, because I think I'd suggested, like, are we going to speak to staff members or teachers whose classroom it had been in? But it sounds that from your conversations that in speaking with the principals, they had at some point. So, okay.
And so, future for all substitutes, maybe that's a different protocol you get into. Again, you're not expecting this to happen. That's not the situation.
Certainly not.
Internally, Dr. Adams probably does talk with her, but I will tell you, there aren't a lot of districts that have enough substitutes. So you take what you can get, and hopefully they do as well as they possibly can. Your wife knows, she's a teacher. They're tough to find right now. It's very difficult, but you train them as best you can. And I think that's what they are doing now too, is continuing the training. One of the things that Kelly and I talked about is, up until now, when a substitute teacher was coming in, they didn't have a face-to-face with Kelly. They went through the process. They did all the paperwork correct, all the right things. That wasn't the issue. But as I said to her, I said, one of the things you could do is have a face-to-face with them. You get to pick up nuances about somebody when you're actually having that face-to-face. So I think that was going to be a plan moving forward, which I think is a good thing. You can go over some of the rules in the buildings, but also someone sits in front of you, and you can, what you do with all the other hires you do. And so this was, why wouldn't you be doing the same thing? So simple little change that might not change this, that's not that, but moving forward, I think it's a good practice. A little more time on her part, but it's worth it.
And then I had 2 questions.
You go right ahead.
I appreciate the law, and our practice is to run a query every 3 years. As a parent volunteer, we are required to have one done every year. Did you consider changing the timeline for substitutes and or short-term staff to have it done more frequently, like once a year, similar to parents?
You could. There's nothing that says that you can't. I guess I would argue to that is that's a reaction to this situation in a substitute, because it could be no different than a custodian goes out on the weekend, sadly, and this happens, we know this to anybody, gets caught drunk driving, gets caught doing something stupid. Why are you waiting to do other staff 3 years, but a substitute teacher 1 year? So unless you're going to do it all, my personal opinion, you can do whatever you want. I just don't know that what you're gaining out of that, because you've never had a substitute issue before. Right. One time doesn't necessarily make you change all your practices, because I would question the manpower hour to be able, honestly, to be able to do this effectively.
That was going to be my follow-up. Like, what if we did all the staff every single year? How many more staff would we need in order to do that?
I can't quantify how many. Probably some clerical, I would say, because how many staff do you guys have? I don't even know off the top of my head. No, I'm sorry. Staff. That would include substitute teachers.
700 of us.
Yeah. So you're doing that every year. It's a lot, because it's not the actual physical act of sending into the query. That's actually the easiest part, because then once it's in, they do the work. But it's getting the people to sign up the paperwork, chasing them down when they don't send it back to you, which is human nature. And that's the hard part, and that's where the every 3 years. And so what you typically do is, and I won't speak to how Kelly's aligned that yet, but you have a cycle of, so you have 700 teachers, I'm making this up, every 3 years you're doing 250. And so it balances it out so you're not getting killed in 1 year too.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not going to speak to how Kelly's doing it, but it makes sense when, if you have a teacher you just hired this year, and the 3-year cycle, if you've determined, is next year, you're going to be doing them more than you need to be. So you usually typically get in a cycle and do a third, a third, a third.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, again, I don't think it would kill you. It's not that, if that's what the district does decide to do. But it would be, I don't think Aisha and Kelly and her staff could handle that on top of everything else you're asking them to do.
Right.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, it would
The
require
reality
more
of it.
staff, right.
The reality, and then things would get pushed aside, and then you're into a bad cycle again.
Yep.
And that's the hard part. Not again, but in a bad cycle.
Okay.
But it's a good question. It's a tough one. Every district has to decide how to best do it. Most just settle with the law and just do 3 years.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You got
Thank
it.
you for pulling this together. The report was great.
Anytime. If there's anything, you need any questions, please, Dr. Adams can, if something pops when you go home at night.
Yep.
Just ask her and she will.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, Jacqueline.
Sorry. Susie O'Horo, if you could state your name and address again.
Hi, Susie Horace, 7 Wonders Drive. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I was one of the concerned parents when this whole situation arose. And I just wanted to understand from what you said specifically, what recommendations, if any, do you have at this point for what should be done differently in terms of hiring practices so that this doesn't happen again? As I understand it, maybe that's still in review. But was there any lump sum recommendation about what should be done differently?
Thank you for the questions. There isn't really, honestly, because nothing was done wrong. There was a query done at the beginning. There was an actual, the way the fingerprint law is actually written is that you don't physically have to do a fingerprint when you go to a new district if you've had one within the past 7 years in another school. We do what they call a suitability. And so you contact, there's an agreement between districts that we're not going to lie to you. The person has done it here. They're good. So eventually, this person would have had to, after a 7-year period, get a new fingerprint. But that fell within. So nothing was wrong in the hiring. I guess the only thing that I don't know that anything different would have been done. We've made recommendations, Susan, about things that you could continue to try. Like I said, the face-to-face meeting with the HR person, with your HR coordinator person, Kelly. Sorry about that. And I'm not saying that would have changed anything at all. It's just that it adds another layer in, making sure that the queries are done every 3 years. They are doing those, but Kelly's new in this position and she's wrapping her head around the cycle that they're using. But no, honestly, I don't think there's anything different you could have done. It was a very unfortunate incident. Horrible. That put you guys on the news. It stinks. But it's not that this couldn't have happened someplace else either. It has. And you've got to weather it. You've got to look at your protocols. What can we shore up? But you didn't do anything, not one thing that I have found wrong. There's nuances that we've talked about, the police, the communication, the little bits of things, but there's nothing the district did wrong at all. It was very unfortunate that it became so public for you guys. That's the hard part. Again, could have been arrested at 4 PM at home. Nothing would have ever been said. No one probably would have even known the person worked in the Hingham Public Schools at all. Sadly, that's just the way it was, the timing, which made it very difficult this month and a half for you guys. And it's hard, but I don't blame parents for questioning either. That's what you do. That's part of the process. But honestly, Susan, thank you for the question, but I don't think there's anything different that could have been done.
Thank you. And Jacqueline?
Jacqueline Beaupre, the president of the Hingham Education Association. I just had 2 comments and a question. So I think it's a problem in your report if you didn't speak to a single paraeducator that was working with the person on their last day in a particular school.
Okay.
Yeah.
The principal that runs the building. So.
I know. And I am a little concerned that we're advocating communication. We should prepare communication first. I think if the police have determined someone shouldn't be in a building, you get them out.
You're missing my point.
Okay. Great.
Totally missing.
Okay, great. You can clarify it. And then I was wondering if I haven't read it yet, if your report addressed the issue we had where the person was removed on like building by building from the sub list. And it didn't seem like there was communication from one building to another, that perhaps this person wasn't a good choice of a substitute for other buildings. So I'm wondering if your report addressed that.
I'll deal with the last one just so I don't forget it. That's an internal. I was in Plymouth Public Schools with 13 buildings. That would never have happened. You don't, unless it's an egregious something where someone is a harm to children, and you make sure you actually don't even communicate to the other principals, you communicate to the HR, but that wasn't this situation. Simply not having a sub in a building because they might not follow a lesson plan is not necessarily a reason the principal would contact the other schools. It just wouldn't happen. That's not reality. It just wouldn't. Say that again? Okay, for not. Okay, I'm confused at that kind of point. Then the other point would be about the communicating with the paraprofessionals. Again, that was simply the time trying to get everything. I talked to the building principals. They knew I was calling, so hopefully they have relationships with their. And I missed the second one again. Just remind me quickly the second point you had. Oh, so the communications. It's not that you're waiting to do anything. It's simply an MOU is an understanding that allows the schools and the police to work together. There is no harm. The person wasn't on the lam. They weren't doing a damage to the children. Waiting 10 minutes or so. I'm using 10 minutes to make sure that communication happens, because we had to know. This was going to be a public outcry. The minute police arrest someone on a campus, it is a public outcry. I think it's not unfair to say that Dr. Adams and your school committee chair should have known that. I don't think that's unfair. It doesn't mean you're letting the person commit more crimes. That's not what we're talking about. In this situation, there was zero harm to the students or the staff in any building at that particular moment. And so that's based on my arguments. That's it. You can disagree 100%. You have every right to do that. But up until then, there had been zero arguments because I would question, were the paraprofessionals raising any of these really bad alarms to the principals? Okay, that's not what I had heard. Then that needs to be taken up internally, I think. Then take that up internally. Absolutely. That wasn't about what this report was about.
Anyone else? Okay, Susie O'Hara.
Sorry, I just had a follow-up question from before. So in your opinion, and in your experience, are there other communities that have more robust hiring practices for their substitute teachers? Because my takeaway from what you just said is that there's nothing that we could have done differently, and therefore there's no assurances to the community that we couldn't be put in a similar situation. So again, my question is, are there more robust practices that we can put into place, like in addition to just meeting with someone, and other than filing queries every other 3 months, that would have captured this person and prevented them from being hired ahead of time?
Honestly, I've been in education over 35 years. I don't believe so. You do your queries, I would assume, I'm making an assumption, that we know with teachers, for example, when they're in the hiring process, you do a reference check. I think the reference checks are done. And so I am only saying meet with, just because I think it adds a layer, and that's been an experience that I used before. But I also think we have to understand, and this is hard to hear, but people do some dumb things occasionally, and it's not pleasant. In this particular situation, it was very public, and that made it very difficult. But you can't ferret out every single person that's going to do something wrong. You just can't. I think that's unrealistic to say that this could never happen again. It's not realistic. People are human beings. They do things that are wrong. And I'm not justifying it all, and I'm not minimizing that, but I think you can do only your due diligence all the way through the process. And again, the query and the fingerprint were done. There was nothing on this person's record. It happened after the fact. And I don't even think that there was any way you were ever going to even know that until an arrest warrant comes out. And that's difficult to hear, and it's difficult to process as a parent and a community member. I get that. But it happens.
And I think part of the hiring process too, mental health is not a crime. And it's against the law for us to even ask about their mental health status. And so that's what's concerning here. And just like I wouldn't want any staff who works in the district to have their information plastered on social media, and I would try to put a stop to it. I would hope that we would stop doing that in this situation as well. It's unfortunate, and I think what ends up happening on social media, it's becomes so toxic, and it's the rumor mill, and it's the telephone game, like you said, and there are just some inaccuracies and false things put out there. I have always said to people, I'm a phone call away. People can text or call or whatever, and if they're not getting the answers, then they can always text or call me, and I am happy to follow up. And people have never had a problem with that in the past when it had to do with masking or getting the kids in school. So I'm not sure why this situation was different, and it continued to be perpetuated on social media. And for me, I try to teach my kids, we know that there's a mental health crisis right now, and social media is a huge problem. And I tell my kids, you have to remember that, and it causes all kinds of problems. And we are exhibiting behaviors that I would not want my children to do to their friends or colleagues or other people that they know.
Right.
So I would ask people to be just mindful of that before they start pushing that stuff out.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
I agree with that. But I also think that some of that, so I completely agree with that. I think some of that, though, was forget the Friday communication. I mean, some of that was a gap in communication back to, at least one of the parents who asked some questions and didn't get an answer and felt that that was their next outlet.
But the chain of command would be, you don't get the response that you want from the superintendent. The chain of command would be, you've got 7 elected officials.
Yep.
I didn't hear from one person to say, I don't really like the answer. Can we talk about this? Not one.
Yep.
And that was not a problem when you were reaching out to me several times during COVID.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. So I mean, that's the problem that I have here. And I get there's a communication gap, and we have a path forward to figure out, to know when the police are involved in the schools. This is how we're going to communicate in the future. But it's not a black and white. And even the chief of police, he thought we should not have communicated it. He did not believe that we should have communicated it when we met with him the following week.
Yep.
But
that's the healthy discussion.
It's the healthy discussion. Yes, exactly. Having a respectful conversation. That's what democracy is all about.
And it's. I've been around police so much in my work life because of in education. Most would say exactly what he says. That's just not what they do. But we're in the public schools. It's totally different.
Right.
And there has to be an understanding of that. He might have done it differently, totally fine. But the reality is you deal with constituents far different than he does.
Right.
I mean, he's got the whole town, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have children in the schools. But that's the healthy conversation you need to have. And you had a bad incident. We step back, learn from it, have internal conversations that might need to happen. That's fair. But the district didn't do anything wrong, and that's the most important thing from this. You're just going to learn moving forward of all different things. So.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
All right. 7.4 to receive program recommendation for preschool and pre-kindergarten for 2023 through 2024 school year and act as appropriate. So I believe this is Dr. Adams and Dr. Cataldo.
I have a very important question. Does anyone have a cough drop?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. Just before I begin, coughing throughout your presentation. I'm going to take 2. Thank you.
So we had both a memo that sort of gave some deeper description, and then we had some slides for you. We'll start off with the planning process. We held many meetings. We started in August. We came in August, I believe, to share that we were starting this process. And it was started with the impetus that we had additional spaces at Foster. The new elementary school building, the new elementary school will have 5 additional preschool classrooms. And we wanted to make sure to use that space in order to address what has been shared in the last year that I've been here, that we don't have full day offerings and enough offerings for all of our students with disabilities, as well as having enough peers as well in the classrooms. So we started in August. We spent a lot of time trying to understand enrollment with students with disabilities. COVID years didn't help to sort of try to stabilize and understand those trends. So we spent a lot of time understanding the enrollment trends. We looked at offerings and enrollment and tuition. We shared in the packet tuition programs in the local area, the costs, the program offerings that are offered in the area, because we're competing with those. And so we need to create a program that is competitive in relation to what's offered in the area. We also looked at budget resources that we currently have. Aisha was very helpful in understanding what do we have as personnel, what are we collecting as far as tuition. We visited programs in Duxbury and Wayland to identify some best practices and want to look to continue to visit other area districts throughout the spring. Conducted a survey of the families and analysis of those results. And we went through several different scenarios for programming and models for both the new elementary school and East, and we've settled upon a next best step for next year as a result. The survey results, just to highlight a couple of things, we did some work around asking families around tuition. You'll see we had 181 responses. You'll see that there was a variety of different tuitions, but less than 10,000 was preferable. But we did also, see some other results. In the next one, we also asked parents if they were interested in extended day, and it was a 50-50 split. We asked also which program model best works for you. It was overwhelmingly a 5-day, full-day program, you'll see for the majority, and then there were smaller numbers for some other options, 3-day, full day, 2 full day, half day programming as well. So the majority of families, over 70%, were looking for a 5-day full day. In looking at the most important consideration for early childhood programming, curriculum and program availability and cost were the top responses, but also location and teachers were just as important. This was sort of a checkbox. Folks could check off all of the things that were important to them. So we kind of broke this down a couple of different ways to try to make sure we could explain it so you were very clear on what we were trying to present. The new elementary school, because of the construction, one of the primary drivers was that we really can't offer any half-day programs there. The demolition will be happening. A lot of work will be happening in the front of the school. So folks can arrival and dismissal needs to really happen at those 2 end parts of the day so that some of that work can happen throughout the rest of the school day. So that was really a big driving factor in saying the best option for the new elementary school was offering a full day program. So we have an 8:32, which start day for programmatic day, 5 full days for 5.5 hours. We settled on the integrated programming, having 2 multi-age classrooms, ages 3, 4 in those classrooms. We felt the multi-age really gave us more options for placement of students with disabilities and gave us more flexibility in enrollment possibilities, and also the identification of peers. The program models are based upon, for the integrated program, continue what the model has been, 15 students with a teacher, and the paraprofessional supports are needed for the classroom. Our goal is, as stated by the state, up to 7 special education students and 8 peers is our goal. We are recommending tonight some tuition that we'd like your approval for. At the new elementary school, we would continue the pre-K Spanish immersion program, but add a Kids in Action preschool and an additional pre-kindergarten classroom. Last year when we did the KIA programming and we did the lottery, there were sufficient students for an additional classroom. So we're hopeful we can do that again. And we also have a tuition cost for the extended day that would be offered through the KIA. So what we're suggesting at the building out the program at the new elementary school is the addition of those 2 integrated multi-age classrooms and 2 additional KIA, one of which is the preschool and one is an additional pre-K. Okay, so those look kind of like the 2 strands. Sort of a sample schedule that we hope to share with families based upon the current KIA program over at the new elementary school, sort of that arrival and centers, morning meeting, snack, part of the day being focused on literacy, outdoor play, lunch, again, a math block, and then some end of the day centers and a closing circle at the end of the day and dismissal. Did we go backwards? Yes. And Barbara, feel free to chime in here with the multi-age program. We really settled upon, again, that multi-age classroom because we really feel it can give us the flexibility to meet the needs of our students with disabilities and enrollment, and based upon the needs that we currently have, as well as our recruitment of those peers. You know, that multi-age classroom is kind of developed so that you're meeting multiple needs of students, and you're relying on the older peers and the general education peers to support the younger students as well as your students with disabilities.
I think what's also really important is the opportunity to have that full day class with the students who are already identified as having needs. Excuse me. One of the advantages will be the fact that we'll be able to take data and watch the progress, and also be able to watch the learning curve as they come through the district, which we haven't had that kind of opportunity. Certainly we've had students here, and certainly we've taken data, but not in the way that we can do with this now. I think that will be, I don't want to say it's a luxury, but it will certainly be advantageous for us.
The curriculum is based upon the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. All of the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks have a pre-K component based upon early literacy, beginning literacy skills, letter sound identification and writing, sort of really creating a really print-rich environment where children are exposed to lots of books. In math, students are developing early number concepts, as well as building foundations for 2- and 3-dimensional geometric shapes. In science, they're exploring hands-on opportunities to really experience the world around them through observations. And in social studies and history, they're really, enjoying stories about different people, the way individuals celebrate holidays in their community, and why they celebrate them. For the eSchool programming, this is based upon really keeping the program as it is, as it stands now, and really continuing to provide the wide variety of options that are available to students with disabilities. So the Kids in Action remains, this keeps it the same as the pre-K age 4 classroom there, so there's no change there. And then we continue with our full day pre-K option, and then there's a variety of 3 days and 2-day options in the morning for preschool, and then the 5-day option in the afternoon for pre-K. So this really represents what was available last year at East, and sort of just maintaining that. That allows us to continue as we build out the foster program to continue to meet our obligations in the integrated program, to have spaces for our students with disabilities. Remembering that our integrated program is developed so that we're meeting our obligations for our students with disabilities to have services for our age 3-4 preschool and pre-K age students. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think we covered a lot of it. I think what's really important again is that we make sure that with the curriculum that we use at Foster, it's equal with the curriculum that is happening at East. We know that some parents might, depending on whether they have siblings, where they wind up, whether they wind up in Foster or they wind up in East and so forth. So those are things we'll have to be looking at. And then we'll tweak anything that comes along during the course of the year, because it is our first time and there might be some hiccups, but I really feel confident that we have some very capable people already in place working.
Just to present the information in a different way, we did it by school building. This is the integrated preschool pre-K program. Again, what we're adding is the 2 multi-age classrooms, full day, and then the East remains the same as it was last year. They do have an additional staff, a preschool teacher. That preschool teacher, that position would move and fund that multi-age classroom, and we would add another teacher and paraprofessional support. Any additional staff is dependent on enrollment. If we don't have sufficient enrollment, then we won't move forward with the additional classrooms, both for KIA in the integrated program. So enrollment is key. If we're able to generate that enrollment, we'll move forward. If not, we will not. You'll see in a previous slide, you'll see changes also to that tuition that we hope for your approval as well. And then in the next slide is the Kids in Action. Again, we're keeping at the East, that pre-K classroom for Kids in Action with its extended care till 6. And then at the new elementary school, we'd be adding a preschool as well as an additional pre-K. Again, the addition of those classrooms are based upon having sufficient enrollment to be able to do so.
I also will say that I think this is a really great opportunity for families to come on board into the school district now, sort of onboarding at age 3 instead of maybe waiting till kindergarten for some of their students because they're in other places. Now they can come right in, and the intent of having a really strong literacy and math program will be helpful as the students are moving up to have some background and continue to feed into the system. Plus they have the opportunity to be in their neighborhoods, essentially.
Just a registration timeline. If you've noticed in the area, a lot of preschool pre-K programs have done their registration much earlier. They are registering now and providing seats now and asking families for registration information as well as deposits now. So we're already a little behind. So we're hoping with your approval, we can begin advertising and begin opening the applications. Hope to plan some open houses in January, both at East and Foster, and then move to a lottery at the beginning of February with notices of acceptance shortly after, and then deposits and registration due in February. And then based upon if there are still seats available, we'll continue open enrollment to fill any remaining seats. As far as staffing, this is our current staffing for the program. These are teachers. These do not include related service providers and OT as well for the integrated program. We have the 2 KIA pre-K teachers and the Spanish immersion and 1 paraprofessional. At East, there are the 4 teachers, 1 separate teacher, a paraprofessional supports, and the 2 KIA pre-K staff and 1 paraprofessional. The proposed staffing for next year would be, again, to go down to 3 at East, which is where they were last year. 1 of those positions moving over to the new elementary school. 1, continue the sub-separate program there, continue with our paraprofessional supports, and continue with the KIA at East. And then adding at the new elementary school 1 integrated program teacher, again, based upon enrollment. And adding an additional staff for the KIA. And we would also like to dependent on enrollment and dependent on going through the budget process, consider adding a director of preschool who would help support the further development of the program. And we would like to fund that through the tuition. One of our central ideas in our planning was to make sure this was budget neutral. We know that there are lots of considerations coming up budget-wise, and we want to make sure that any decisions we make around staffing can be absorbed through the tuition costs. So that is dependent on funding through the tuition and dependent on going through the budget process. And then just to highlight the Kids in Action program, I know Jackie is hopeful to start registration as well as soon as tomorrow. Again, a preschool, the pre-K, and another pre-K at the new elementary school, and continuing with the pre-K option at East. And I think that's it.
Okay, I just had two. One is at Foster, are we looking at hiring more related service providers to staff this?
Do you want to answer that?
We might need to. I mean, obviously, students coming in will have needs, and we're going to have to look at what those needs are because they will reach capacity at some point.
Yeah, okay. And then is the tuition competitive with local preschools? I'm sure you looked at that.
Yeah, we provided in the packet a summary of tuitions in the area. That was a big part of what we looked at. We are just as competitive, if not, we're a good option for many families.
Right, I'll just say a little biased. I have two that went through the integrated preschool, huge believer in the program, and it's a great way to have them come in, and they do kind of follow the, or at least they did back in the day, they follow what the kindergartners do too. So it's a great way to kind of get, as you said, into the neighborhood schools, and then also to learn how things are done in school and hit the ground running in kindergarten. So
I think also, just to make a side comment on that too, you will see on the last page of the handout that Dr. Adams put together a chart of all the different programs and tuitions and so forth.
Yeah.
One thing to note is the fact that unlike pre-pandemic times, there are no wait lists anymore. Students are finding seats everywhere. So I think it's really important that we get out there and make our effort to bring folks in and really introduce them to the Hingham Public Schools. This is a grand opportunity to show them what we have, to show them the talented staff that we have inside the classrooms currently, and that will move forward next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, a lot of the same comments, but we've seen this evolve since August, and so I'm excited to see kind of the changes you've made as you've researched it and as you've looked at other programs and tuitions, and that you really listen to the parents too, because I do think it's a great way to bring students into the school, get them on the same public school schedule, have them be comfortable in their neighborhood buildings, and have kind of that daily schedule and routine that then they'll be doing when they move to kindergarten. So I think it's a great way for us to help bring numbers up over time. And like you talked about the difference, I think it's great. We have one program that's going to be all full day only, and one that maintains the programming that's in place this year for parents who already have kids in it, so they're not then switching up what they're used to. And a couple quick questions as you get into presenting the options for registration. I think we're all really involved in it, but it might be great to have like a little bit of an explanation, the difference between Kids in Action versus the integrated preschool program. And within that, is there any value in adding, Alex actually mentioned it earlier, but the high school program, I know it's completely different, but it is another option for parents within the Hingham Public Schools. So it might be good just to have that as a third, option that's also available to parents depending on what their needs are. And then my other question is for Barbara. You mentioned the siblings. Do you have more information, or can you talk to how that would work if a family has multiple children and they end up in different programs at different schools? Are you going to really try, obviously some of that's out of your control, if they're a peer model versus applying?
Yes, so just so I understand, if you mean multiple children applying into the preschool,
Into the preschool.
I think we would strive to try to have them in the same location for pickup purposes. I don't know, my experience has been trying to cross this town when all the parents are out doing pickup. I could drink a whole cup of coffee trying to get across town.
Yeah.
That being
Kids
said,
in
I think
action
we
in
want to
different
try to
places
keep the kids together.
Right.
I won't, I can't make any guarantees, but it would be the natural assumption that we try to keep them clustered in the same school.
Thank you.
We had a lot of discussions about bringing both programs into one registration process, but we really felt that at this point, it was important to maintain the differences in the program. Kids in Action, with its extended care, it has a different mission, it has a different philosophy, and just keeping the both programs separate right now is really, and really maintaining the integrity of the integrated program and what it has to offer for our students with disabilities, our peers, and really just keeping the two programs separate was really important right now. Whether we move forward in a different model in the future, perhaps, but for right now, this seemed like the next step was to build out the program at Foster, given the constraints of needing to have a full day there, providing options for families for that full day option there, and making use of the classrooms that we have there as well for the community.
Especially if they're new to the preschool programs, probably don't have that kind of background on what those distinctions are.
I am manifesting the new elementary school opening on time, but I have a little devil on my left shoulder whispering in my ear. What happens if it doesn't? Is there enough space in the current Foster to house this program? Right.
As soon as we get those windows, I think that's a big piece of the next milestone for the new elementary school. So hopefully that, last I heard, that was on schedule. I'm sure there are other milestones that will be just as important. There aren't 5 spaces. There probably are maybe 3 additional spaces. It would mean displacing specialists and other pieces. So
okay, all right. It's not going to happen. So
We're going to work out.
That's right.
But we're not anticipating hiccups.
Traditionally, the preschool, and I believe the KIA is the same, they start a little later, giving us another week of a window. But
I will. Not before I say though, this was a great presentation. Thank you both very much. And to Carrie's point, we did not live in Hingham when my kids were in preschool, but I do recognize how important preschool is not only for students like future academic success, but also what a bonus it is for parents to have a full day program, and just the amazing, I've had the pleasure of visiting the East School preschool program on many occasions, and the staff there is just phenomenal, and the educators are just, if you're ever having a bad day, I recommend popping over there for 20 minutes and getting your fill of 3 and 4 year olds.
It's a joyful,
refill your tank.
Joyful, fun place. Exhausting. They run around a lot after little ones. I know, and they believe really strongly in the opportunities that the early childhood program has to offer both our peers, but our students with disabilities, and that it presents an opportunity for them to develop skills that are going to really last them a lifetime, right? That's saying all the things we needed to learn, we learned in kindergarten, but I think it was in preschool and pre-K, right? Sharing, collaborating, communicating. Lots of important work happens every day in our preschool program.
And don't discount the lifelong peers. I know my son started in a preschool program, and one of his closest friends, now I can say a couple of decades later, preschool program. So I think it's a great opportunity for students to meet their neighborhood friends before they even advance to kindergarten.
Any questions from the public? No. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Then I will make a motion to approve the preschool and pre-kindergarten fiscal year 24-25 program as outlined by Dr. Adams, including tuition.
I will second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, 7.5, to complete first read of policy JFAB on enrollment of children of personnel, and policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. I am going to pass this on to the policy chair, Allie Anderson.
So this follows nicely from the last discussion about the preschool. This is a new policy. It is a first read, so no action is required tonight on either of these policies. But it is a policy that would allow staff members who do not live in Hingham to enroll their child just in the preschool if there is space available. And there's, if you read through it, there's some other determining factors, but they must request via the superintendent before May 1st, so we can determine if there is actually a space available for them. It would still be tuition based and would be a nice benefit to some of those teachers within the, so this would be for all teachers within the district, but just for preschool spaces.
I think it's important that it's every employee who works.
Yes, sorry, I misspoke.
A minimum of 20 hours
Yes.
a week. So includes our clerical, admin assistants, paraprofessionals, food service, van drivers, bus drivers, everybody.
Right, everyone.
Would that also include the after-school components of it?
Yes, if there is space available.
Okay.
So we would take, which goes back to the timeline that was just presented, we would take all the applications from Hingham residents, see how many spaces were filled, and then determine how many spaces were available for any employee.
Any questions on this?
Well, I guess it is a question. Will these policies be on the website so the public can view them before any action's taken?
Yes, they will be in our packet online, which should be up tomorrow or the next day.
And then my one question, I know it says that participation in the preschool and pre-K program doesn't guarantee placement for K through 12, but is that a possibility? Is it the intention, if we have room, that they would continue to?
Not currently. This was just intended for the preschool, kind of as a pilot program to see how it goes within the preschool spaces. So we can revise that line if you feel it reads.
Just the way I was
otherwise.
reading it, because it had read does not guarantee a placement. So that's what I was wondering. Does that mean it's an option that it could be a placement?
Not now.
Not now.
Not
This
now.
is just
Right.
meant to be.
Just for preschool.
Just preschool. If that's not clear.
I feel like that might not be. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
we
I
need
feel
to-
like as we're reading it now,
Yep.
we can update that.
Okay. I'm trying to think of what.
Because it says does
We can probably
not.
just take it out.
We can probably just take it out.
Yeah. Take it out.
Okay, we can take it out.
Okay. That's my only question.
Any questions from the public? No? Okay, so the second policy.
The second policy, CBI, is the superintendent evaluation. And this is just an update to the policy. It doesn't change anything about the evaluation process itself. We put in some language about the school committee members who are participating. The feeling among the subcommittee was that it would be nice if the committee members who were giving input actually had time to be part of the goal setting process, as well as then time to work with the superintendent themselves and actually have productive feedback to give to the process. We also wanted to have some language in there about incoming and outgoing members, because we felt especially the outgoing members had a lot of feedback to offer, and it would be nice if we could capture that even though they're not part of the evaluation process. So we added 2 lines in there just to recognize both of those.
Any questions? Any questions from the public? No? Okay. All right, great. So we will take this up at our next school committee meeting. Let's take a vote.
I'll make that one change and then I'll send it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, 7.6 to approve the owner's project manager for the Wellness Center at Hingham High School. I believe Aisha Opong is taking us through this.
As I think at the last school committee meeting, there was a vote taken to rename the project the DOC. As part of that also, we started the process back in November in terms of trying to find an OPM for this project. the RFQ was advertised on the Central Register within Hingham Public Schools websites and on the Hingham Journal. And we got four proposals submitted as part of that RFQ. The committee that reviewed those applications consisted of 5 people: Jen Benham, the school committee finance and capital chair, Raymond Estes, Zachary Sargent, and James Cahill, who were all part of the Hingham Sports Partnership, and myself. So we met one time to review the proposals, and after reviewing the proposals, we then graded the proposals that were received. And after that, we decided that we should have interviews just to be able to hear from those vendors and to be able to ask them questions about their proposals. So we did that. We met with all 4 of the vendors, and we decided on 2. One of them being our first choice and the second being our second choice. And we received a price proposal from both. And one of the members of the group met with the person who, our top choice, and we went along with our top choice today. And Tokotech AE Consulting was the vendor that rose to the top in terms of the proposal submitted, the interviews conducted. One of the things that we were very impressed by was that Tokotech actually went to the site before coming to the interview and was able to actually provide insight on how they will help us with the project. So we were very impressed by that's one of the things that we were very impressed by, as well as the experience and everything else of the persons who attended. So at this point, we just would like to get your approval into, sorry?
Their reference checks were done on.
Reference checks were done.
On all of them.
As
they all came
well,
up
yep.
well.
As well. And as part of that process, we would like to get your approval to have Dr. Adams sign off an agreement between the school department and Tokotech to be the OPM for this project, please.
Any questions? Any questions from the public? Or comments? No? Okay.
All right. I will make a motion to approve Tokotech AE Consulting as the owner's project manager for the new high school wellness center known as the DOC, and to give the superintendent, Dr. Margaret Adams, the approval to sign the contract on the school committee's behalf.
I will second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think you're coming up next as well. 7.7 to approve an increased rate for the light and sound technician and to approve the increase in rate for service as part of the facilities fee and act as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So as part of the rentals of our space at the high school and at the middle school for performances in the auditorium, we usually try to get either a member of staff or student to sign up to be our light and sound technician. And what we found is that we've had a little bit of difficulty trying to find someone to take on that role recently. And as part of that process, what we would like to do is to expand the responsibilities of that role by including a management component of it. Right now, what's happening is that Katie Hartman St. Clair has to meet with the persons who want to rent out the facility, show them the lights, and speak. It almost has become a part of her job to manage the rental of the auditorium and the lights and sound component. And that may not be always very efficient for Katie to be performing that task. Mm-hmm. So what we would like to do is to be able to increase the rate for that light and sound technician, write up a job description that explains that they would have, the person taking on that role would also have to meet with the whoever the person is renting the auditorium space and organize for the light and sound, and also in terms of just being the district's representative as part of the light and sound aspect of that rental space. To be able to pay for that, we think it's necessary to also increase the part of the rate for the rental that goes towards the light and sound technician rate. So what we will be doing is that we will be increasing that rate to increasing that rate to $50 for the category 1, which would be, for example, PTOs and other school based organizations, and also $50 to the community as well. And then for any outside groups, it would be $60. So we just asked to get your approval in terms of both increasing the rate of the light and sound technician and the fee that's charged to persons renting the space as well.
Any questions? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I was just going to say that I think also something just for folks to note is that these, particularly as we invest more in our sound and lighting technology, they're they can be pretty complicated. And I think the use of students used to be great, but some of these systems are super sensitive and really, and they're expensive to purchase. And we've been very fortunate to have the HAA and other drama groups and music groups provide the funding for those. So I think this makes a lot of sense. So I will make the first motion to increase the rate for the light and sound technician from $31.50 an hour to $35.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
All right. And then I'll make a second motion to offset the increase cost to increase the light and sound tech fee at the middle school and high school in rental agreements from.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yep.
I don't want to cut you off in any way, but the rate is currently, it's a range of a rate from $31.50 to $35, and we're increasing to $38.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's okay. So I'll go back and amend that motion.
Rewind.
Yes, rewind. I amend the motion to increase the rate for the light and sound technician from the current range of $31.50 to $35 to a new rate of $38.
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Aisha. The second one, to increase the light and sound tech fee at the middle school and high school in rental agreements from $40 to $50 in categories 1 and 2, and increase category 3 from $55 to $60.
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so 7.8, to discuss title of Director of Business and Support Services and act as appropriate. I am going to, Michelle Ayer had come up with this fabulous idea, so I'm going to pass this over to her.
Oh, thank you. So in recognition of just how much work and how much the role of the Director of Business and Support Services has evolved, particularly over the last 12 months or so, basically since Aisha has joined us, between overrides for building projects, overrides for operations, the dock, the Foster building, all of the things are getting done in addition to just the regular jobs and the amazing work that Aisha is doing. As everyone knows, and no one more so than Aisha, the district does not have any extra money for compensation. But the one thought was, though, to show the not only appreciation, but the value that we put in the work that you do on behalf of the district, is to recommend a change in title to add the title, to change your title to Executive Director of Business and Support Services, to more accurately reflect the leadership role that you take and the importance of the role that you put on for the district.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any discussion? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay.
Yes, we are grateful, Aisha.
Yes, I am so grateful. Thank you.
All right, so I will make a motion to approve a change in title for Aisha Opang to Executive Director of Business and Support Services.
I will second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you.
Congratulations.
7.9, with that new title, to approve grants and act as appropriate, Aisha Opang, Executive Director.
Director.
I'll pass it on to
Perfect.
That's your first
executive
delegate.
There we go.
Well done. Well done.
Perfect.
Yes. So tonight, I'm grateful again to Cape Cod 5 Bank. They've been very generous to our programs over the year. So tonight, I wanted to share our most recent grant from them in the amount of $1477 for our science department, and that's broken up into two smaller grants. The first is $1,000 for some equipment for our science labs, including things like hot plates. And the second grant in the amount of $447 is for purchase of some materials for our physics labs, a color mix kit, and mirror sets. So.
All right, any questions?
the check today too.
Any questions from the public or comments? No. Okay.
All right, take a motion. Yes, thank you, Cape Cod 5 and the Science Department that will benefit from this. I'll make two separate motions since it's two grants. All right, I will make the first motion to accept the grant from Cape Cod 5 in the amount of $1,000 to purchase additional science equipment, including hot plates for the high school science department.
I will second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
All right. I will make a motion to approve acceptance of a grant of $447, again from Cape Cod 5, to fund the purchase of additional science equipment, including a color mix kit and mirror set for the high school science department.
I will second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. And then 7.10 on the agenda is to declare surplus and act as appropriate, but we have nothing this time around. So we will move on to item 8, subcommittee and project reports, and warrants signed. And I'll start off with Matt.
Thank you. So 2 quick updates. I attended a East School Council meeting earlier today. We reviewed, every month we're going through one of the goals of the school improvement plan. So we reviewed that. Did a pretty extensive deep dive on how Principal Haas is working with his team and teachers to understand MCAS performance, which is lower at East than the other schools, and really put an emphasis on what they can do to improve those, not just the MCAS scores, but in general, taking the data and I thought putting really kind of good focus areas on a month-by-month basis in terms of how they can apply what they're understanding, where some of the deficiencies are to improve that. So that was a good meeting, and we had a special education subcommittee meeting last week, December 6th, I think. Allie and I were there with Dr. Cataldo and 3 members from CPAC, and had a good discussion on, we heard a couple updates from CPAC, including the presentation that was on December 4th that Katie helped lead. And Dr. Cataldo actually had I think you had met with your staff that day and took us through a lot of the focus areas that you had shared with them, and in terms of things that are going well and things that we can work on and improve. So it's good meeting.
You already heard several of our policy updates. A lot more policies coming through in the new year. Get ready. And other than that, nothing to report.
Carrie?
Middle School Council met today. We had a good discussion about negotiations. A lot of the concerns that were raised by the 2 parents that spoke tonight was along those lines. Mary Poppins Jr. auditions started today. There are band, orchestra, and chorus concerts this week and next. There's going to be a cyber safety presentation sponsored by the Plymouth County DA's office next Wednesday. And the council is focusing on the handbook this year and kind of revamping that. Salary negotiations, we're continuing to meet with all of our unions and negotiate in good faith. We met with Unit A last Thursday, the 7th, and our next meeting with them is on January 3rd. With Unit B, as we've talked about before, the DLR has agreed that we're at impasse. And so we do have one meeting with Unit B on January 5th with the state mediator. And then I think that they're not available again until February. So we'll meet with them then. So I shared the good news about Unit C. And then Unit D, we're working through an initial contract with them. So it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take a while. We met on December 1st and presented the remainder of our responses to their initial proposals, including a wage proposal. And we're looking forward to some productive discussions because, again, initial contracts can take a while. And our next meeting with them is on January 4th.
Great. Thank you. Jen?
We had our finance meeting, subcommittee meeting today at 4:30. And it was our first budget meeting of the year for FY25. Aisha and Dr. Adams kicked us off with going over the budget priorities. And we were joined by all of the building principals and Dr. Cataldo. And each building principal went through, the whole leadership team went through their budget priorities for the coming year. What we talked about what the current budget drivers are, specifically talked about the increase in special ed cost coming down the pipeline, I guess is the word. And we didn't go into detail on any of the specific numbers, but that is to come in the next coming months. And then we also have another meeting this Thursday where we will also follow the same agenda, but we'll be hearing from athletics, transportation, technology, facilities. But again, no numbers yet, but we will be getting those most likely at our first meeting in January. And we're going to do a little bit different this year. Unlike last year where we had all our budget meetings on the third Wednesdays or Thursdays, the school committee meetings are going to be primarily for the budget. So the January 8th and January 20th will be regular school committee meetings where the public will get to also partake in the presentations and listen for the budget for the upcoming FY25. And there also are warrants in your packet.
Great. Me, Michelle. School Building Committee, as Dr. Adams mentioned, is meeting tomorrow at Foster School to review furniture, fixtures, and equipment. I'm going to schedule another Student Advisory Council School Committee joint meeting for early January, so I'll keep you posted when I hear back on the date for that. Just a quick legislative update. Myself, Ness, and Jen met with Senator Patrick O'Connor, and Jacqueline Beaupre from the HEA joined us to have a conversation with Patrick about school funding and sort of what might be out there in the future for opportunities. Like we all sort of recognize that Proposition 2.5 really limits how schools can be funded and what's possibly out there that we can help with. So it was a great conversation. Patrick was really receptive. He talked about a few things that might be becoming before the legislature. And then we sort of offered like how can school committees across the state, the MTA work together to push this agenda forward and how we can generate more funding for our schools.
Yeah, it was a good meeting.
Yeah.
I have two updates. Matt Cosman and I attended office hours on November 28th, and then the Foster School Council met on December 7th. And that's it. So item 9, other items that's not reasonably known within 48 hours. Does anybody have anything? No. All right. So item 10 is to adjourn to executive session and not to return to open session.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, not to return to open session for the purpose of approving minutes from executive session held November 27th, as an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare.
And to provide an update on negotiations with HEA Units A, B, C, and D, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare. I have a second. Matt?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Jen? Aye. Michelle?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. We're adjourned.